In this world, there exist people whose actions defy common sense. They are the kind of people you never want to associate with under normal circumstances. However, humans are prone to making mistakes. If there's filth on the ground, one would normally avoid it. But sometimes you can't avoid it because you don't realize it's filth. The most troublesome are those that don't seem to like filth at first glance. My name is Ruby, and I'm a 29-year-old pharmacist. Despite the delicate name Ruby given by my parents, I'm quite tall. Ever since I was a child, I've been tall, standing at 5'7". I'm a head taller than my female colleagues at work. My features are strongly defined, lacking in cuteness. Yet, even someone like me found a good match. I married a man who works in the same building as the pharmacy I work at. His name is Josh, a 30-year-old businessman. He's a gentleman with a bright and calm personality. We became a couple after Josh came to the pharmacy seeking help. Josh's direct boss had come in with a lower back strain. The pharmacy where I work is mostly staffed by women. Being relatively older and taller, I'm oddly adored by my colleagues. Among them, Crystal, a 26-year-old junior, is particularly noticeable. Raised in an all-girls school, Crystal admires tall women like me. "Ruby, let's go for drinks together today," I apologized to Crystal, who invited me with sparkling eyes. "Sorry, I have to visit my parents' home with my husband today. It's about my brother." Upon hearing my reason, Crystal smiled in understanding. "Oh, your brother's engaged? Right, congratulations." I sighed involuntarily at my junior's pure-hearted congratulations. Perceptive Crystal noticed I was troubled. Seeing her worried expression, I forced a smile to deceive her. "Don't look like that, it's nothing serious. Just some issues with my brother's fiancé." Crystal has been under my guidance since she started working at the pharmacy, so she's overly attached to me. Even when I married Josh, she was crying while congratulating us, so it was no secret to such a junior that I was troubled. On our way back to the pharmacy, Crystal asked me in a low voice, "Is it that your parents don't like your brother's fiancé?" Realizing she had hit the mark, I gave in. "Dad insists that my brother's fiancé is odd. My family home now only has Dad, as Mom has already passed away. Dad was all smiles and totally supportive of my marriage. However, he's been hesitant about my brother Frederick's marriage." My brother Frederick is 26, the same age as Crystal. Since Mom passed away, Dad has been a single father, and I've tried to fill in for Mom as much as I could. That's why Frederick and I have always had a good sibling relationship. Frederick has always been smart, topping his class in school. He graduated from a prestigious university and now works at a major company. He's a serious and sincere young man, but being so focused on his studies and a bit stiff, he didn't have much experience dating women. Then, Frederick fell in love. The object of his affection was a woman working at the reception desk of the same major company. Her name is Agnes, a 24-year-old beauty. She fell for Frederick too, and they started dating. Frederick, who relies on me as his sister, introduced me to her first. Agnes was charming, lovely, and cheerful. She was so delicate and pure that I understood why Frederick was so smitten. When she learned I was a pharmacist, she said, "That's amazing. I admire you being so smart." She came off as innocent, carefree, and a lovely lady. I thought Dad would be over the moon to have such a sweet daughter-in-law. I had no doubts about that. But then, Dad called me as soon as Frederick brought Agnes home. I expected Dad to be thrilled about his son bringing home a lovely fiancé. However, on the phone, Dad lowered his voice. "You know, Agnes seems suspicious. I have a bad feeling about her." Even Dad, usually straightforward, couldn't tell the happy-looking Frederick and confided in me. Dad had no concrete reason but felt she was shady and creepy. To ease Dad's worries, I decided to visit home with Josh. I can't believe it. Dad was all for it when I married Josh. Hearing me chuckle about Dad's overprotectiveness, Crystal frowned. "I don't like that woman either. How dare she call you her sister?" Crystal seemed angry, jealous that she couldn't call me sister. As I tried to calm down Crystal, pouting her lips, she said seriously, "This is my theory. Having survived an all-girls school, innocent, pure, lovely beauties are usually the worst. Be careful." "Thanks, I'll keep that in mind, even though I don't want to." Little did I know then how accurate Crystal's theory would be. After work, I headed to my parents' house with my husband Josh. I felt bad for making busy Josh take time out. As I apologized for Dad's worries, Josh said kindly, "Don't worry, Cody is just concerned. There must be something. There must be something." Josh was calmly choosing a gift to bring to Dad at home. Josh's mother had also passed away early, leaving him with a single father. My father-in-law, a very busy man we rarely saw, but he was a respectable person, just like Josh's dad would be. He calls me Ruby Lou and is very fond of me. Morris, wanting a daughter, often sends gifts. The last gift was a set of expensive brand watches for couples. I rarely use it because it's too fancy for everyday wear. It's nice of Cody to think of us, but I feel guilty. As we were on the train to my parents' house, I sighed, and Josh smiled. "Don't hesitate. Dad loves you, Ruby." Josh wore the watch Morris had given him. It suited Josh, but as a pharmacist, it would be too conspicuous for me to wear. However, I truly appreciated Morris's kindness and thought of wearing it from now on. Before I knew it, we had arrived at my family home. Now only Dad lives there, as both Frederick and I have moved out. I worried that energetic Dad might be lonely. Dad is an engraver and still carves whenever he gets orders. Dad, though a bit stubborn, is well liked in the neighborhood for his good nature. Such a smart dad is troubled over his son's marriage. Though not based on Crystal or Josh's words, Dad came out silently. When we visited, Dad came out silently. "We're home, Dad. I brought Josh with me," I said. "Good evening. We hope we're not intruding." Dad nodded. And ushered us into the living room. Dad, being fond of cleanliness, keeps the house immaculate. He insisted on us sitting down, stopping me from making tea. "Ruby, Josh, I'm sorry to have you come over so late." I quickly tried to calm him. "Dad, stop it. Let's just relax a bit." As I soothed Dad, Josh presented our gift. It was a famous one wine. So there we were, me, Josh, and Dad, discussing over drinks while I served the sliced cheese. Dad was sipping his wine, then taking a slight breath, he began to speak. "I'm a craftsman dealing with names. Carving so many names has made me sensitive. According to Dad's years of experience, a person is not defined by their name. Instead, life is about shaping the given name into one's own. So, Dad senses things when carving names requested by people. He claims to understand if the owner of the name is sincere and hardworking. By carving it, contrary to the belief that a craftsman's work is lonely, it's quite the opposite. They interact with various people like clients, fellow craftsmen, and suppliers. Seemingly indifferent, craftsmen are often the first to observe people closely. Dad mentioned when I first brought Josh home as an example. When I saw Josh, I knew right away that he was right for you. Josh can be trusted. I just knew it." Josh smiled, replying, "I'm honored." But when the topic shifted to Frederick's fiancée, Agnes, Dad's expression hardened. He said he felt an indescribable creepiness the moment he saw Agnes. Nothing was explicitly wrong with her behavior. She was polite and beautiful, but something didn't sit right with him. I argue not having had that impression at all. You're overthinking it. Maybe you were just surprised Frederick brought home such a beautiful fiancée. As I chuckled, Dad exclaimed, "Frederick is being deceived. That woman reeks of rot." Overwhelmed by Dad's intense reaction, Josh calmly said, "Even so, Frederick's marriage is their business. It's best to not say anything rash." Nodding in agreement with Josh, Dad sighed. It was all based on Dad's intuition. I thought it rude to hold such a strange, bad impression of Agnes, but Dad wasn't one to badmouth someone just because of his likes and dislikes. I understood his genuine concern for his son's marriage. As I pondered what to do, Josh cheerfully assured, "Don't worry, Cody. If anything happens, I'll handle it." Dad relaxed a bit, reassured by the thought of Josh's help. I thought Josh was just saying it to comfort Dad. I had dismissed it as Dad's unnecessary worry, but Josh was actually making real preparations. Thanks to Josh's persuasion, Frederick and Agnes got married. I was moved by Frederick's groom look. Agnes was also elegant in her beautiful, pure dress. With this, Agnes became my sister-in-law. Frederick remained busy at the major company. He talked innocently about looking forward to their honeymoon. Despite Dad's reluctance, Josh must have convinced him. Frederick was in high spirits, thanking Josh. But I was troubled. There was something odd about my sister-in-law, Agnes. She'd visit me at work whenever she was free. Though the building where the pharmacy is located has restaurants and shops, it's primarily a prescription pharmacy, so patients come in. Her presence without a reason was a disturbance. Initially, she claimed to drop by while shopping. "I have plans to have tea with friends. I just want to see you, Ruby." Agnes's over-familiarity irked Crystal, who glared sharply at her. Crystal was muttering that I should keep Agnes away from the pharmacy because of my busy schedule. What's with her showing up at her sister-in-law's workplace during work hours? I'm sorry. I'll speak to her about it. Despite my warnings, Agnes's behavior didn't change. Many of our patients are sensitive and dislike noise, but Agnes talked loudly in the pharmacy, upsetting the patient's peace. A patient reached their limit and complained to the hospital, which led to a complaint being filed against the pharmacy. I was profusely apologetic to the pharmacy manager. Seeing me like that, Crystal's anger grew. "I can't take it anymore. If you find it hard to say, then I will," she exclaimed. This was during our break as we returned from lunch at a nearby cafe. During our break, I had repeatedly scolded Agnes, but to no effect. Frederick was also troubled that Agnes had quit her job and wasn't doing any housework. Regrettably, Dad's bad premonition had come true. Dad became wary of Agnes and took away the keys to the family home from Frederick. This led to a major argument between Frederick and Dad, but it was a wise decision. Frederick gradually realized why Dad had sounded the alarm as he learned of Agnes's unreasonable behavior. For some reason, Agnes kept following me. It didn't seem like genuine affection from a sister-in-law, but rather something more sinister. The thought of Agnes showing up. One day, Agnes followed me again at the pharmacy, keeping me uneasy. Then, one day, Agnes followed me again. Seeing me frightened, Crystal stepped forward. "Don't follow us. It's a nuisance for the pharmacy." As Crystal glared, Agnes smirked triumphantly. "Be grateful I even visit a place where an ugly big sister like you works." I realized she was referring to me. Before I knew it, Crystal and Agnes were physically fighting. Crystal was furious, yelling, "You lowlife woman!" I hurriedly separated them, but my wallet fell and its contents scattered. Taking advantage of the confusion, Agnes fled. "I'm sorry, I just couldn't control my anger," Crystal apologized. Crystal and I gathered the scattered contents, including my point cards. Finding no cards missing, I felt relieved. However, this was just the beginning of the turmoil. After Agnes finally returned to a peaceful work environment, stopped showing up at the pharmacy, things calmed down a bit. Frederick, somewhat relieved, left for a honeymoon with Agnes. I finally returned to a peaceful work environment. Crystal continued to be a good friend and colleague, but during a lunch break while eating sandwiches outside, she said, "Ruby, about your wallet. Are you sure nothing was stolen? I have a bad feeling." I checked afterwards. Nothing was missing. To my response, Crystal looked uneasy. "Well, if you say so." Crystal, though a bit eccentric, is perceptive and smart. Unbeknownst to me, a vital credit card had been stolen. The culprit was my sister-in-law, Agnes. Agnes's reason for following me was to steal valuables. She had seen the matching watches my husband and I received from Morris, mistaking me for being wealthy because of the expensive brand. Agnes stole my credit card. Agnes went on a shopping spree with it during her trip. Even Frederick, who initially overlooked it, was dismayed by Agnes's extravagant spending. Frederick confronted Agnes about her excessive shopping, clearly exceeding the credit limit. "Isn't it strange to be able to shop this much?" Agnes ignored Frederick's suspicions. She had extravagantly spent a total of $220,000 on my credit card. Frederick paled when he realized it was a card in my name. But Frederick knows my personality well. He sensed something was off. Agnes, getting carried away, called me during a break at work. Crystal was listening next to me. Agnes said in a ridiculous tone, "Thanks for the $20,000 wedding gift." She claimed to be thankful for being allowed to use my credit card. I was confused for a moment. "So, I don't have a..." Agnes made a strange noise. At my cool response, Agnes made a strange noise. "Huh?" She candidly confessed to stealing the card from my wallet, knowing it was in my name. That's when I finally realized the truth. Agnes had unwittingly used a passport to hell. In short, the card was in my name, only managed by Morris. I usually didn't carry it around. Originally, I preferred electronic money payments over credit cards, but Morris insisted on getting me one when I married Josh. "Use it when you need to, Ruby. The bill goes to my account," he said, laughing heartily. I could never dream of pleading Morris's account, so I never used it. I had almost forgotten its existence. This was a strategy by Josh. Taking Dad's intuition about Agnes seriously, he set a trap. The unused credit card was bait, renewed but never used. He hinted at its existence to Agnes, leading her to steal it. It was natural for me not to panic about a missing credit card. Josh had sneaked in and placed it in my wallet without my knowledge. I had shown Agnes my wallet before. She noticed the credit card then and waited for an opportunity to steal it. When Crystal and Agnes got into a scuffle, I intervened to stop them. That was when the wallet was dropped and she took it. Agnes fell perfectly into Josh's trap. When I explained this to her, Agnes responded with a defiant tone. "I did nothing wrong. Your father-in-law can just pay the 20 grand. I calmly informed her, unaware of the seriousness of the situation. "Morris knows about your misuse. You won't get off easily. Be prepared." Actually, the impressive building where the pharmacy is located is Morris's own company building. Josh assists in Morris's work. Both Morris and Josh are serious businessmen and gentlemen, but also strategists. Moreover, Morris has a wide range of connections. He even has his interactions with people who operate on the fringes of the law. Misusing a credit card managed by such a cunning mogul would not end well. Morris was fully intent on detaining Agnes upon her return. When he told her his men were watching the airport, Agnes's voice trembled. "What's going to happen to me?" "I don't know. I don't care, really," as I coldly replied. Agnes got angry on her own. She shouted that her husband Frederick would pay. But that was impossible. Frederick had resisted Dad but yielded to Josh's persuasion and presence. Not going through with the registration of their marriage, meaning even after the wedding ceremony, they were still strangers. Knowing the truth, Frederick had left Agnes behind and returned home. Agnes cried when she realized Frederick had abandoned her. As her crying grew loud, I was about to hang up, but Crystal snatched the phone. Crystal harshly dismissed the sobbing Agnes. "It's your responsibility, right? You deserve it, ugly." After Crystal handed the phone back, I ended the call. "You have a personal grudge against women like Agnes." She just smiled at my question. And so, my brother Frederick's marriage fiasco ended. Frederick sued Agnes for the unauthorized use of the stolen card. Agnes couldn't pay back the $20,000, so she ended up borrowing from a financial institution introduced by my father-in-law Morris, with high interest rates. Agnes's debt quickly ballooned to a huge amount. She worked tirelessly morning to night to repay it. However, she was caught trying to default and flee. It seems she's working abroad now. What kind of job? I don't know. Frederick had quarreled with Dad over the marriage, but they reconciled. Josh mediated, and our family was back to normal. Frederick regretted not being more discerning with women. "I'm ashamed for troubling everyone," Josh comforted the disheartened Frederick. "Frederick, even with a pretty and pure woman, you should look a bit more at the inner self." Frederick nodded earnestly to Josh's gentle admonition. I apologized to Morris for the trouble caused, but Morris just smiled broadly, waving it off. "For Ruby Lou, it's no big deal. Josh did well, huh?" Morris then invited us all on vacation during our next break. Josh and I agreed, but Morris chuckled mischievously. "Why not invite Ruby's dad and Frederick too? And Crystal," he laughed, suggesting to us. Crystal and Frederick would be a good match. When I invited Crystal, she was thrilled to accept. "Traveling with you is like a dream." She didn't mind that it wasn't just me, but also Josh, my father-in-law, Dad, and my brother. Eventually, we all went on vacation. Josh and I explored tourist spots together, while Morris and Dad relaxed by the sea. Meanwhile, Crystal and Frederick were arguing. The strong-willed Crystal blamed Frederick for falling for someone like Agnes. Frederick was initially patient, but eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. "I admit I caused a huge problem for my family, but you don't have the right to scold me like this." "I do. I'm Ruby's little sister." When Morris and Dad returned from the sea, Frederick was crying, and Crystal was eating ice cream. Seeing Frederick's heartache from Crystal's lecture, Morris whispered to Dad. I thought Frederick and Crystal would be a good match. Dad laughed gracefully at Morris's wry smile. Frederick and Crystal, who initially fought upon meeting, got married a year later. Crystal finally became my sister-in-law. Dad was fully supportive of Frederick and Crystal's marriage. Indeed, Dad had the ability to see through people's true nature. Josh Morris and I are smiling, convinced of this.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.